So RedSec has been here for just over a week now. There is a hell of a lot to learn about this game, and I've been grinding away to learn all the ins and outs for you guys now that it is finally here. But before we can get into all of the nitty gritty and all of the really deep details, I wanted to do a more basic beginner's guide to RedSec, just so that everyone can learn all the basics, all the simple and easy stuff to learn before we get into the more detailed stuff down the line. Now, before we get into today's video, I have to give a big shout out to EA who have sponsored today's video. So a huge thank you to those guys. But with that being said, let's get stuck into a basic beginner's guide to Battlefield RedSec. Now, first and foremost, I just wanted to quickly start with some settings. Now, I've done a full settings guide, so that is still all relevant, whether it's multiplayer or Battlefield RedSec. I'll leave that linked down below if I can remember, but if not, just go back on the channel, you'll find it with this thumbnail here, and that will give you all of the key settings that you want to change. I don't want to go through all of that again because it's all pretty much the same stuff, but there's just a few extra settings that are now a bit more relevant with RedSec finally being here. Now, first and foremost, this is obviously personal preference, but I've actually changed the armor color when it comes to how it looks for not only you, but also when you're shooting enemies, for example. The initial color is purple, and for me personally, it doesn't quite stand out as much as I would normally prefer. So I've actually changed it to a few different ones to try and test out what I like. The two that I've kind of landed on is more of like an orange type of color, pretty much the same type of orange that the normal color is for enemies in this game. And then I've also actually tried it with like a more bright blue color, and that also stands out as well. So this one isn't really a necessity. This is just, to me, the purple armor plates don't really look quite as nice or stand out quite as much. So yeah, I've changed some of those settings as well. Now, something else very important, and this is more so for mouse and keyboard, but you can also do this on controller as well. I've actually changed the keybind for armor. Now on PC, it is 5, which to me just feels a little bit too far out of the way. So I've actually switched this to the middle mouse button, which means I don't really have to change anything. I'm just pressing the middle mouse button to quickly armor up if I'm in a pinch and I really need to get some armor on. I don't have to mess around, and that means that my fingers are still in the WASD position on my left hand, and it means my right hand can kind of take care of that. So that one's more of a personal preference, and obviously again, I would just change that if you're on controller to something that feels comfortable, because putting armor on is obviously very important, and in this game it takes quite a while longer than it does in a lot of other games when it comes to shielding up. So yeah, the armor in this game is very important to be able to quickly equip that if you are taking damage. Now, moving on, I want to talk about the classes, and I'm not going to go fully in depth because I'm actually going to spend a lot of time playing as each class. As of right now, I've mostly been playing support and only have a handful of hours on the other classes. So keep your eyes peeled. There will be a full-on guide going through every single class and the best ways to play them and stuff. As for this video, it's more just some basic tips for each class. Now, they do play a little bit different than multiplayer, so I'd recommend actually giving each of the descriptions a read when you are loading into a game. The very quick breakdown for those of you who just want to quickly understand what each class does. Assault will generally just be a little bit quicker at doing stuff, so they will actually plate up about 33% faster. You'll also do missions slightly faster as well. So for example, calling back or redeploying your teammates is actually a little bit quicker when you're playing as Assault. On top of that too, you'll also have the proficiency for assault rifles. So if you enjoy playing with assault rifles, well, assault might be the go for you. Now, engineer, much like multiplayer, they are equipped for dealing with tanks and stuff like that. Their weapon proficiency is for the SMGs. And so if you like SMGs, engineer might be a good choice for you. There are also special vaults around the map that you can only open as the engineer as well, so keep that in mind. Support kind of goes without saying. This is pretty similar really to how they are in multiplayer. You are just there to kind of support your teammates through healing and also giving ammo, and you will also obviously revive faster. So if you're playing with some friends who maybe are newer to battle royales and they're going to go down a lot, playing as support can be really good because you can get them back into the fight very quickly. Lastly, for recon, I think they're going to go pretty underrated, to be honest, because they are actually very, very good at what they are meant to do, which is recon. You can use their drone to actually spot enemies. You can use their tugs gadget, which means it's essentially like a little UAV for you. And they're obviously very good with sniper rifles too. I forgot to mention that for support, by the way. The LMG is the proficiency for support. And obviously with recon, that is the sniper rifle. Now moving on to the drop locations in the game, it is honestly a little bit too early to tell which are like the objective best spots to drop so far. But just going through some of the ones that I've found to be really good so far, one is the golf course. This is a really good spot because it seems to be a pretty hot drop, so a lot of people will drop here, and if you enjoy trying to get some kills early, it is a fun place to drop, but it's not like too chaotic because it's not obviously a very big point of interest. There's not that much here other than the actual clubhouse. So if you're looking for somewhere that is kind of hot but not too hot, I think golf course is a really fun place to drop. You can play the rooftops as well, which is really fun. There's also then downtown and boutique, which are very high loot areas. There's going to be a lot of stuff in there because there's obviously a lot of different buildings and a lot of different places where you can find stuff. So those sort of three areas for me are probably the most enjoyable places to drop so far. But again, it is a little bit too early to tell like where the objective best places to drop are. I would recommend is dropping pretty much somewhere different each game and trying to find where you like, whether that's somewhere that's hot, whether it's somewhere that's a little bit cooler and there's less people dropping there. So just make sure early on you're trying to drop in a lot of different locations, not just the same place over and over again. Most importantly, when it comes to dropping though, you want to definitely try and drop quickly. Now, for those who didn't know, pretty much the more you aim at the ground when you're dropping, the faster you'll drop, which is how it works in most battle royales, obviously, but it's like a lot quicker in this. You will absolutely fly down to the ground if you just aim pretty much vertically down. So keep that in mind. If you're going to try and drop somewhere, be sure to try and drop super fast rather than trying to go like the long way, because realistically, the first people that get to the ground and get some weapons, you're generally going to win those early gunfights. Now, when you have dropped, something that is worth noting is the chests that you'll find throughout the map. Now, there are 3 different types of chests. The green chests are just the kind of basic ones. These will just generally have some common items in there, like a weapon and maybe a grenade, maybe something else as well. The black chests are slightly better. They're kind of like dark gray type of color. These ones generally have a little bit better stuff in them than the green chests. So if you see these, they're definitely more worth getting. And lastly, there's then also the like orange chests that, for those who didn't know, are actually class specific as well. So if you open this and you're playing as recon, for example, you're guaranteed to get a sniper in there. If you're playing as support, you're guaranteed to get an LMG. These are class specific. So the stuff that you get in there will be pretty much for your class, and that is very much worth noting, not only for yourself, but also if you need an SMG, for example, like you've already got a sniper and you're playing as recon, but you want an SMG and your friends already looted up and they find an orange chest. If they're playing engineer, tell them to open it and then you can actually get the stuff out of it. So yeah, it's definitely worth knowing that those are class specific. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are interested in more RedSec content leading into the future and obviously more regular Battlefield content as well, be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is a hell of a lot more content on the way, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, the next thing that is definitely worth not neglecting in this game is the missions, which are essentially like contracts from Warzone, for example, that will allow you to pretty much do a very short mission that will then result in some sort of reward. Now, I'm not going to go through every single mission. I believe there are 8 different ones to go through. And in the future, I'm going to be doing one that is kind of like which ones you should focus on, which ones are the best to do, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But for the general sake of this video, all you need to know is that all you've got to do to access these missions is just bring up the map, and over here on the right you'll see, and they will sometimes not be available. That's just because it's depending on the time of game, for example, but usually there will be missions you can do. You can then cycle through them and choose the one that you want, and then it will begin that mission. They're generally very easy. It's stuff like, for example, go and find some bolt cutters and then get into a weapons cache, and that'll obviously give you the reward. Some of them are going to result in airdrops rewards and stuff, but you definitely want to be making the most of the missions. That'll give you some of the better loot in the game, especially early on. And this is also how you'll obtain vehicle keycards too, which can then be used to access the different vehicle trailers and vaults that you'll find around the map. Now, speaking of vehicles, I've got a few tips here, both for if you're in a vehicle and also if you're coming up against vehicles. Now, firstly, if you are playing in a vehicle, the best tip that I can give is just to play slowly and try your best to try and play out in the open. If you're playing in really close quarters areas, for example, something you might not know is that any enemy, even if they don't have like an RPG or anything like that, anyone who gets really close to your tank, they can actually sabotage it, which will essentially just destroy the tank. And it's pretty easy to do, actually, so you definitely want to be trying to stick out in the open a little bit more. Even just for people who do have RPGs, it's a lot easier to spot them trying to shoot them from distance rather than if they're in close quarters. They can like jump out of a building, shoot you with the RPG, then jump back into the building, and they're a little bit harder to find. So play it slow, play out in the open if you do have a tank. And also be sure to constantly head to the vehicle stations because you will run out of ammo pretty damn quick. Now on the flip side, if you're coming up against a vehicle, they can seem pretty daunting, but I'm not going to lie, the vehicles in this game are actually pretty easy to take care of. So when a vehicle spawns into the map, you'll notice that you'll start seeing like anti-vehicle drops that will fly down to the ground. These will be kind of just like a weapons crate, and it's got a bunch of anti-vehicle stuff in there like RPGs and stuff. Be sure to try and go to these and pick up some RPGs. And honestly, if you and your squad have got like one of you with an RPG and maybe an engineer's already got an RPG or an anti-vehicle launcher, between the two of you, you can easily take out tanks. Like, they seriously aren't that hard to take out. It's also worth noting, if you didn't know this from the multiplayer, if you aim for the rear of the tank, you will deal max damage as well. It only takes a couple of hits to actually take out the tank if you're hitting it in the right spot. So they are a lot easier to take out than you might think. They're obviously still very dangerous though, so don't just run up and think you're going to kill it easily. They're really a glass cannon where they will delete you on the spot. Be very, very careful around tanks, but also they do take damage pretty easily too. So don't be too scared, just play it smart, play it a little bit slower, and you will no doubt be able to take out some of those tanks. Now the last tips that I've got here are to do with the pacing and kind of the end game as well. Now the pacing of this battle royale is a little bit different than games, for example, like Apex or Warzone. It is a little bit slower, at least early on. I'm sure we'll probably all get a little bit faster as we get more used to it, but this is not Warzone, so don't go sprinting around trying to get 40 kill games. That is probably not going to happen unless you're an absolute freak. Even some of the better players that I've seen out there, they're getting, 30 kill games, but those same players in Warzone were getting like 60 kill games. So keep that in mind. It is a little bit slower. It's more of like a mix of PUBG, for example, and Apex Legends, where it's still got a little bit more pace than PUBG, but it's also a lot slower than an Apex or a Warzone. So keep that in mind, play it a little bit slower, be a little bit more strategic until we obviously get the hang of it, where I'm sure the pace will go a little bit faster once everyone's kind of learned the game in and out. Finally, when it comes to the end game, something worth noting in this game, which I don't think I've actually mentioned in this video, the circle or the firestorm will essentially kill you instantly. So that is very much worth noting. And that means that in the end game, the final circle is like way more crucial than other games because you can't do gas or storm plays. For example, like running out into the gas and sneaking around the enemies. You can't do that in this game. So that final circle is deadly. And that means that positioning and sort of getting the high ground or the best place within the circle in that final zone is absolutely crucial. If you're trying to play the edge of the circle in that final zone, you're more likely to lose than you are in a lot of other battle royales. So keep that in mind. Again, it plays a little bit different than a lot of the BRs that we're used to. The ring is way, way, way more deadly in this game, and you do not want to be messing with it. It is pretty much an instant kill, like I mentioned. But that is it for a very basic beginner's guide when it comes to playing Battlefield RedSec. Like I said, there is a lot more advanced content on the way. I don't think it's really worth getting into all of the deep details after only a week. People are still learning the game. We don't even know what the best weapons are and stuff like that. So for now, we're just going to cover some basic stuff, but there is a lot more advanced stuff on the way. And if you are enjoying RedSec, be sure to hit that subscribe button because, like I said, there is a lot more content on the way. While a lot of the content I do will be regular multiplayer stuff for Battlefield 6, there is going to be a lot of RedSec stuff as well. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.